This episode contains some disturbing details. This is Late Night Classics with me, Bibi Jacob. I'll be reading you my selection of Greek and Roman classics to accompany you into the night. Welcome back, listeners. It's time to dip into Book 8 of Ovid's Metamorphoses. You met the grieving Demeter in our first episode. Here she appears in her Roman form as the goddess Ceres, protector of nature. Tonight, I'll be reading you the story of Erysichthon, whose daughter Mestra was turned into a shapeshifter. Parts of this story are incredibly gruesome. You have been warned. Erysichthon's Hunger. Mestra's father, Erysichthon, was one who despised the majesty of the gods, and he offered them no honours on their altars. He is likewise said to have profaned with an axe a grove of Ceres, and to have violated her ancient woods with the iron. In these, there was standing an oak with an ancient trunk, a wood in itself alone, fillets and tablets as memorials, and garlands, proofs of wishes that had been granted, surrounded the middle of it. Often beneath this tree did the dryads lead up the festive dance. Often too, with hands joined in order, did they go round the compass of its trunk, and the girth of the oak made up 15 arm lengths round. The rest of the trees, too, lay as much under the oak as the grass lay beneath the whole of the wood. Yet not on that account even did Erysichthon withhold the axe from it, and he ordered his servants to cut down the sacred oak. And when he saw them hesitate, thus ordered, the wicked wretch, snatching from one of them an axe, uttered these words: "Were it not beloved by a goddess, but even were it a goddess itself, it should now touch the ground with its leafy top." Thus he said. And while he was poising his weapon for a side stroke, the oak shuddered and uttered a groan, and at once its green leaves, and with them its acorns, began to turn pale, and the long branches to be moistened with sweat. As soon as his impious hand had made an incision in its trunk, the blood flowed from the severed bark, as it pours from the divided neck of a large sacrificial bull before the altars. All were amazed, and one of the number attempted to hinder the wicked design and to restrain the cruel axe. Erysichthon, the Thessalian, eyes him and says, "Take the reward of thy pious intentions," and turns the axe from the tree upon the man, and hews off his head, and then hacks at the oak again, when such words as these are uttered from the middle of the oak: "I, a nymph, most pleasing to Ceres, and beneath this wood, I now, dying, foretell to thee that the punishment of thy deeds, vengeance, the solace of my death, is at hand." But monstrous Erysichthon pursued his wicked design, and at last, weakened by numberless blows and pulled downward with ropes, the tree fell down, and with its weight levelled a great part of the wood. All her sisters, the dryads, being shocked at the loss of the grove and their own, in their grief repaired to Ceres, in black array, and requested the punishment of Erysichthon. She assented to their request, and the most beauteous goddess, with the nodding of her head, shook the fields loaded with the heavy crops, and contrived for him a kind of punishment, lamentable if he had not, for his crimes, been deserving of the sympathy of none, namely, to torment him with deadly hunger. And since that goddess could not be approached by herself, for the destinies do not allow Ceres and famine to come together, In such words as these, she addressed a rustic Oread, one of the mountain spirits. There is an icy region in the extreme part of Scythia, a dreary soil, a land desolate, without corn and without trees. There dwell drowsy cold, and paleness, and trembling, and famishing hunger. Order her to bury herself in the breast of this sacrilegious wretch. Let no abundance of provisions overcome her, and let her surpass my powers in the contest. And that the length of the road may not alarm thee, take my chariot, take the dragons, which thou mayst guide aloft with the reins. And then she gave them to her. The Oread, borne through the air on the dragon chariot thus granted, arrived in Scythia, and on the top of a steep mountain, they call it Caucasus, she unyoked the neck of the dragons, and beheld Hunger, whom she was seeking, in a stony field, tearing up herbs growing here and there with her nails and with her teeth. Rough was her hair, her eyes hollow, paleness on her face, her lips white with scurf, her jaws rough with rustiness, her skin hard through which her entrails might be seen. Her dry bones were projecting beneath her crooked loins. Instead of a belly, there was only the place for a belly. You would think her breast was hanging and was only supported from the chine of her back. Leanness had to appearance increased her joints, and the caps of her knees were stiff, and excrescences projected from her overgrown ankles. Soon as the Oread beheld her at a distance, first she did not dare come near her, she delivered the commands of the goddess, and staying for so short a time, although she was at a distance from her, and although she had just come thither, still did she seem to feel hunger. And turning the reins, she drove aloft the dragons back to Thessaly. Hunger executes the orders of Ceres, although she is ever opposing her operations, and is borne by the winds through the air to the assigned abode, and immediately enters the bedchamber of the sacrilegious wretch, and embraces him, sunk in a deep sleep with her 2 wings. She breathes herself into the man, and blows upon his jaws and his breast and his face, and she scatters hunger through his empty veins. And having thus executed her commission, she forsakes the fruitful world, and returns to her famished abode, her wonted fields. Gentle sleep is still soothing Erysichthon with its balmy wings. In a vision of his sleep, he craves for food and moves his jaws to no purpose, and tires his teeth grinding upon teeth, and wearies his throat deluded with imaginary food. And instead of victuals, he devours in vain the yielding air. But when sleep is banished, his desire for eating is outrageous, and holds sway over his craving jaws and his insatiate entrails. And no delay is there. He calls what the sea, what the earth, what the air produces, and complains of hunger with the table set before him, and requires food in the midst of food. And what might be enough for whole cities, and what might be enough for a whole people, is not sufficient for one man. The more too he swallows down into his stomach, the more does he desire. And just as the ocean receives rivers from the whole earth, and yet is not satiated with water, and drinks up the rivers of distant countries, and as the devouring fire never refuses fuel, and burns up beams of wood without number, and the greater the quantity that is given to it, the more does it crave, and it is the more voracious through the very abundance of fuel, so do the jaws of the impious Erysichthon receive all victuals presented, and at the same time ask for more. In him, all food is only a ground for more food, and there is always room vacant for eating still more. And now, through his appetite and the voracity of his capacious stomach, he had diminished his father's wealth, but yet even then did his shocking hunger remain undiminished, and the craving of his insatiable appetite continued in full vigour. At last, after he has swallowed down his estate into his paunch, his daughter alone is remaining, undeserving of him for a father. Her too he sells, pressed by want. Born of a noble race, she cannot tolerate slavery, and stretching out her hands over the neighbouring sea, she says, "Deliver me from a master, thou who dost possess the prize of my ravished virginity." This prize Neptune had possessed himself of. He, not despising her prayer, although the moment before she has been seen by her master in pursuit of her, both alters her form and gives her the appearance of a man and a habit befitting such as catch fish. Looking at her, her master says, "O thou manager of the rod, who dost cover the brazen hook as it hangs with tiny morsels, even so may the sea be smooth for thee, even so may the fish in the water be ever credulous for thee, and may they perceive no hook till caught. Tell me where she is who this moment was standing upon this shore, for standing on the shore I saw her, with her hair dishevelled and in humble garb, for no further do her footsteps extend." Mestra perceives that the favour of the god has turned to good purpose, and well pleased that she is inquired after of herself, she replies to him as he inquires in these words: "Whoever thou art, excuse me, but I have not turned my eyes on any side from this water, and busily employed I have been attending to my pursuit. And that thou mayst the less disbelieve me, may the god of the sea so aid this employment of mine. No man has been for some time standing on this shore, myself only excepted, nor has any woman been standing here." Her master believed her, and turning his feet to go away, he paced the sands, and thus deceived, withdrew. And Mestra's own shape was restored to her. But when her father found that his daughter had a body capable of being transformed, he often sold the granddaughter of Triopas to other masters. But she used to escape, sometimes as a mare, sometimes as a bird, now as a cow, now as a deer, and so provided a dishonest maintenance for her hungry parent. Yet after this violence of his distemper had consumed all his provision, and had added fresh fuel to his dreadful malady, he himself, with mangling bites, began to tear his own limbs, and the miserable wretch used to feed his own body by diminishing it. I told you this story was gruesome, but it's also quite apt. Our world is full of Erysichthons, eager to destroy and consume. I wonder if Ceres, the blessed Queen of Heaven, goddess of the fruits, could sort out our local town planners. They don't value trees here. They're making us mutilate our beautiful yew tree, hack 2 meters off the top. The yew has seen a lot over the decades. The recent razing of the trees by the school, the endless pouring of concrete. It will soon witness the felling of a grove to make way for a car park. The tree specialist came by and told us not to worry about our yew. It will survive. And it will grow back messy, unruly, vengeful. So I take comfort in this, and in the fact that the yew tree is the tree of life and death, the goddess Hecate's tree. And it turns out that in Roman times, Ceres was the patron and protector of plebeian laws, rights, and tribunes. Perfect. Ovid wrote his Metamorphoses in the 1st century, around 8 CE. The translation I read you was by Henry Thomas Riley, with a few tweaks, and it's in the public domain. Late Night Classics is presented by me, Bibi Jacob. Sound and production by Jeff Chong.